I've changed my makeup. Did you notice?
Hello and welcome to Something Rotten. This is our Suda season, where Blake and I have just finished playing maybe our collective favorite game we've covered on the podcast thus far, at least since Max Payne 3. But Killer 7 is in the rearview mirror, and we're taking on a different kind of beast. Blake, what's your experience been with No More Heroes before we introduce our lovely guest that we'll talk about a whole bunch more?
Hey, man, we fucked up the order. We shouldn't have gone chronological. I think if we started with No More Heroes, I'd be like, all right, cool stuff, expectations set. But when you start with Killer 7, it's like if you have a filet mignon, even a really good meal is still a downgrade afterwards.
It's true. It's like the most stylish game we've ever played. Like, hey, this has some stuff going on.
Hey, this is a game too.
This is truly a game.
You know? I like it. It's just we'll get into it over the next hour, but there's a certain amount of whiplash I had to learn to accept coming off Killer 7 with this one.
That is absolutely true. But neither you nor I are really pros at this game. I mean, it's our first time playing through it, right? Unless you're holding something back. And I thought, we need a real pro on this. And so joining us today is Suzi Hunter, aka the Sphere Hunter on YouTube, a very talented creator who both Blake and I have referenced, I think, on the show and also just between ourselves when we're talking quite frequently. Suzi, thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, it's great to be here. I know we've kind of gone back and forth, Jacob, about doing a podcast at some point. So I'm glad that I'm finally here, and I'm glad that it's about No More Heroes 1, because it is definitely one of my faves.
Hell yeah.
I love it a lot.
Yeah, so I messaged you hey, you want to come on, talk about the first half? Just so you know, you don't have to replay it. And you told me, I've played it 10 times, so I probably have a pretty good working knowledge of it.
Yeah, I've played it 10 times, every version of it, too. Even the lesser quality PS3 version.
So did you come to the game when it was initially released, on the Wii?
I did, but it wasn't day one. It wasn't a day one purchase. But I learned about it because of Killer 7. Because around the time Killer 7 was coming out was when RE4 was coming out, as everyone knows, Capcom 5 and all that. So yeah, I remembered, really loving RE4 and seeing Game Informer magazines about Killer 7 and just being oh, it's a new Capcom game. It's going to be so cool. Wow. I played it, had my entire life changed. That's also one of my favorite games. I've also played it 5 times. But then that kind of introduced me to Suda's work. And when I think about a year after No More Heroes came out was when I finally played it and fell in love with it.
That's awesome. I mean, I am so glad that you also are familiar with Killer 7 because,
I love it.
Like we said at the beginning, sometimes it's kind of a dice roll to play a game that it's hey, everyone thought this was stylish 16 years ago or whatever. Are we going to feel the same way in 2023? And both Blake and I were just totally blown away.
Yeah, I would say it's not very approachable, just with its control scheme, because it's just how do I move? Oh, the A button. Okay, great. The giant A button. But yeah, it's definitely one of my faves. And I feel it's kind of I know this is a pretentious thing to say, but it's kind of like a fine wine. The more time that passes, the better it gets for me. I'll take something new from it every single time I play it at a different stage in my life.
Yeah, and just thematically, it's we still the whole plot line about it being okay, terrorism is over. JK, terrorism's definitely not over. It was relevant then, still relevant now.
Yeah, definitely. Ugh, for better or for worse. Relevancy. Great.
It's funny hearing you talk about the controls, because we played on mouse and keyboard, where things are fine, but it doesn't want to give you too
Oh,
much.
yeah.
It doesn't want to give you too much ease of access. It doesn't actually display any of the keyboard controls. Even if you're using keyboard, you have to determine like what would the right trigger on an Xbox controller be on a keyboard, and parse Suda's philosophies that way too.
Yeah, also, No More Heroes has no controller display. It's like game accessibility has come a long way in a short time.
Does it not? On I'm playing on Switch where I feel like it does.
On PC, I can't even find like a picture of the Xbox controller to tell me like what buttons do.
Wow. Oh my god.
Okay, so fun fact, the PC version will also just display the wrong buttons. If you, because like there'll be like the jobs that'll be like, oh, just mash the X button or whatever, and I'll do that, and it'll be like the Y button that I have to press. So it's like, okay, great.
Honestly, I've been switching between Xbox, PlayStation, and Switch so often that it's like I don't know what any of the buttons are anymore. My
Yeah.
brain is completely broken.
Yeah, they're just weird symbols.
At one point starting this game, it told me to press the ZL button on the Switch, and that was a trip trying to figure out what the fuck a ZL was.
That's the grab button on Super Smash Bros. Melee, obviously.
Oh, how could I be mistaken, Jacob, about the ZL?
Okay, so No More Heroes. Let's talk a little about development, which is mainly I want to list off the things that Suda has said this game is inspired by and get y'all's reactions because it's very fun.
Okay.
But he did say that he came up with the idea of the game like shortly before Killer 7 was released. So one of the things that I've been thinking about here is like Killer 7 is so politically ambitious. It's so kind of like internationally focused, and this, you know, without making a qualitative judgment, is like a much smaller focal point for just like what the story is about. And so it's interesting to think that like it wasn't like years after Killer 7 and he had kind of tamped down his ambitions. It was just like another thing he was thinking about.
So what was he inspired by?
Well, the name No More Heroes comes from a UK punk band, The Stranglers. They have both an album and a song called No More Heroes, which is a good song. I listened to it the other day. It's very fun.
Very appropriate for this game. So it's pretty punk rock.
Travis Touchdown, the main character, was inspired by the wrestler Josh Barnett, but more specifically, and maybe more to your tastes, Blake, very specifically based on Johnny Knoxville. Like, he cites this many times.
You know, here's the thing. Johnny Knoxville, a wealthy man, I would have to assume, is owed money from at least two big game companies, because he was also one of the inspirations for, get this, Nathan Drake.
Is that true?
Yeah, so they're ripping my man's likeness off and not paying up. So Suda, Neil Druckmann,
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
yeah.
That's Johnny Knoxville always sliding toward a ledge going, no, 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 no.
Okay, I mean, here's the thing about Johnny Knoxville, though, is I think it has less to do with him and more just to do with, like, the typical idea of an attractive white man, which is most video game protagonists. It's like, she's good enough.
An attractive white man who's willing to, like, put himself through great injury.
You know, that's a good point, actually. And I guess when you consider the buffoonery of Travis Touchdown, there's more, like, narrative cohesion than Nathan Drake there.
Yeah.
He is a buffoon in these games.
yeah.
Like,
Suda denies that the beam weapon was based on Star Wars and instead says that he was inspired by Spaceballs, which is, of course, the Star Wars parody.
Wow.
Sylvia was apparently inspired by Scarlett Johansson.
Okay.
And my favorite one is the city of Santa Destroy, which the game takes place in. Suda says that he's based it on San Diego, but he also said, you know, San Diego, like in Dirty Harry. Dirty Harry is a movie that takes place entirely in San Francisco.
Yeah.
So
amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Interesting to not hear him bring up James Gunn. Because I feel like we're entering the James Gunnification of Suda 51 at this era, where it feels very James Gunny to me. And I know they're like friends because they've worked together.
what was help me out here? What was James Gunn's like early work? Because I'm kind of unfamiliar prior to his like big superhero movie.
He made Slither. that
Oh,
horror
right.
movie.
Yeah.
He also did Super, I think. the like the realistic depiction of what a superhero would be like.
Right, that did come out a little after this game.
Yeah, and I believe he did like a bunch of trauma movies.
Yeah, I've consulted the intrepid reporters over at Letterboxd who are going to tell us what he was doing around this time. Well, he did Hamster PSA. We're all familiar with that one. Slither would have come out right before this. So maybe, yeah, this does predate James Gunn. So maybe it's the other way around and James Gunn was Suda informed.
I mean, they're just on intersecting paths and they run into each other and make lollipop chainsaws.
Yeah. It's weird. Actually, yeah, like a lot of this game like predates a lot of James Gunn's most notable work other than Slither. So I take back what I said.
Some other just choice Suda quotes on No More Heroes. He said, "Travis is a little similar to me. If I had been an American otaku, what kind of life would I have led? Probably I would have become an international assassin," which I think is a very funny quote.
Yeah.
But then this is particularly relevant to Something Rotten. He said he wanted to make a game as or more violent as Manhunt 2. He specifically said that, which we talked a lot about Manhunt 2's complete like ratings clusterfuck. And so it's like, it's funny that he did that.
I think he achieved it in some ways, but like the game is so slapstick that it's also not quite as violent. Does that make sense? You can be very funny with gore and it cannot actually feel that violent.
Yeah, we talked about like some of the stuff. The reason that Manhunt 2 got like AO ratings was because they were like, you're unrepentant, or like the character isn't seen like, you know, having bad things happen to him for the violence. And so it's like, it's not simply blood that causes a rating, but it's just like, what a bad game to kind of reference in a very funny way. And importantly, two very adult games that came out for the Nintendo Wii, which was a console that did not have many M-rated games at all.
Manhunt 1 is the better one. That's the one he should have referenced. That's a good game.
I don't know why he chose to, but I was gonna add to your guys' point. Like, I feel like No More Heroes is very unique in its like gore and slapstickedness, if that's a word.
Yeah.
That when like there are certain points like throughout the game, and we'll talk about it later, where like something gory will happen, but it's like bookended by like a silly moment that makes it feel like more disturbing to me. I'm just like, what is like, why is this being played like this? This is so weird. Like,
well, they're to your point, like, there is the cutscene with I don't remember his name. He's the, like, superhero type boss. And, like, there's a nonchalance with which Travis kills him at the end, which I think is supposed to be a joke. But the way he, like, just, like, can barely muster the energy to kill this guy, but yet cuts him entirely in half. I was like, that's actually kind of fucking disturbing.
And it is worth noting that there were actually multiple versions of this, which kind of, in the way that blood is sometimes adjusted, it's like sometimes it's more like black goo that shoots out of enemies. I think in like the Japanese and European versions they had like different ones, but now if you buy it on PC or Switch, it's going to be the blood version. Blake, have you ever wondered about the future?
No.
Oh, I think about, you know, it's like, will we have flying cars? Will we find an answer to climate change? What are they going to talk about on next week's episode of Something Rotten?
Jacob, don't you know what we're going to talk? That's not important. Just keep doing the ad.
Well, the thing is, I don't know if we're ever going to have flying cars, if we're ever going to find a solution to climate change, but any of us can actually learn what's happening on next week's episode of Something Rotten by listening to the Nebula feed, because all the episodes come out early there.
Oh my God, all of them?
All of them. Well, yeah, I think so.
No, so not episode 1 of each season. That's the only one that doesn't go out.
That's true. And here at Something Rotten, we believe in delivering you the truth above all else. So you'll hear episode 1 at the same time as everyone else. But if you listen to that episode and you're like, gosh, I just can't wait another week to hear what other gross stuff they're going to talk about, good news. You don't have to.
Good news. You can join by going to nebula.tv/somethingrotten.
And here's another thing that people don't know. That Something Rotten podcast feed, I think it has a cooler picture on it.
I do too.
Than the normal Something Rotten feed. And so it's like a little prize for your podcast feed is you get to see that and be like, wow, that's even better than the one that I saw before.
I agree. No one tell Square Enix about that.
Please do not.
Podcast image.
Nebula.tv/somethingrotten. You know what our sponsor, Henson Razors, is really good for?
Yeah, making you have less hair on your body, doofus.
Okay, but also gifts. Father's Day just passed, but this is a super classy and kind of cool thing to give for a birthday or something. My friend's son recently graduated high school, and this is a true story. He got him a Henson razor as like a "you're a man now" present. Son, here's your razor.
Jacob, you're like 26. How do you have a friend that just got a son that graduated high school?
Because I have mature friends, Blake.
Well, regardless, I hope your friend remembered to go to hensonshaving.com, use the promo code ROTTEN, so he could also give his son a free box of blades.
Happy graduation, son. Here's 100 razor blades. And for me, I remember I hadn't played this until now, but I like saw it when it came out, and like I feel like this game's iconic imagery is those blood spouts. You know, like that's what I remembered about No More Heroes is like, oh, it's that game where you cut off a guy's head and like just blood shoots like 40 feet in the air.
Yeah, and they even like do it in the cutscenes too. Like when after a boss dies, it's just like a geyser of blood.
Yeah, which feels also, I feel like very, I mean, I know like Kill Bill is a movie inspired by many like pieces of Japanese media, but like I always think of Kill Bill in terms of that just like blood geyser. And he didn't, I don't think he specifically referenced it, but it certainly seems within the realm of possibility.
Yeah, it definitely feels like it.
Yeah, well, with Killer 7, remember we read in that book, he got mad that someone said he referenced Kill Bill. So I think he's actually got it out for Tarantino because he was like, no, Killer 7 is not inspired by Kill Bill.
That's funny. And it's like with how many things he is so open about referencing, maybe we should just assume that if he hasn't said it, it is not relevant.
Yeah.
I have a fun fact about No More Heroes. All right, so check this out. In Golden Gai, which is a drinking area in Kabukicho, which is for the gamers out there, the real world equivalent of Kamurocho from the Yakuza series. There is a bar that Suda loves called Bar Plastic Model. And I know this because of the Archipel. Shouts out to Archipel, the greatest to ever do it. They make video game documentaries. They have a profile of him. He goes to Bar Plastic Model. It's a great time for all parties involved. That bar is in No More Heroes. It's the bar you can go drink at. It's like literally just their sign, their logo is Bar Plastic Model. I just thought that was a fun touch. Yeah. As far as I know, there are no other real world establishments in it. It's just that one like 4-seat bar. So shouts out to them. Friend of the show.
Yeah, he did reference, it's like that motel. He's like, oh, it's the motel from Memento. It was another like film reference. I have been forgetting to tell this story, and I am so glad you told me that because it reminded me. The closest interaction that I've had with Suda in my real life is when I was at Game Informer, when I was an intern at Game Informer. He came to the offices, and I did not meet him, but I heard kind of what happened, where Leo was there wearing, our friend Leo Vader, esteemed YouTuber, wearing a tank top that said sexual, like Travis from Killer 7, which he reportedly either did not notice or did not remember was a reference to Killer 7.
On the other hand, really quick, I hung out with Leo the other day, and he was wearing that shirt, and I was like, wow, what timing, brother. I'm playing Killer 7 right now.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then he and a bunch of the staff of Game Informer went out to just like get lunch somewhere, and Suda drank a lot and fell asleep at the lunch table.
King.
Which, look, he had probably been traveling a lot, but it's just like, I just think of Suda getting drunk and falling asleep at lunch in Minneapolis, Minnesota.
I wonder what bar they took him to.
It was probably just, what's that burger place?
Oh, Parlor?
Yeah, I bet they just took him to get a Parlor burger.
Probably. Here's the thing about Game Informer. They love taking people that goddamn fucking basement.
Suzi, have you had any real life run-ins with him?
Not in person, but I did. There was like there was some like kind of behind the scenes chatting when NMH3 was coming out, which was really cool.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Also, I completely forgot about the Game Informer connection, and I swear to God, I did not say I read a Game Informer magazine with Killer 7 in it on purpose. Like, that's literally just what happened, okay?
It's okay. Most people don't know I actually work at Game Informer. It's totally fine. I'm behind the scenes.
Well, why don't we talk a little about Travis Touchdown? Because I feel like he is probably the most interesting figure in No More Heroes, or at least he's like the game's iconic image is this guy, right?
Dude, he's a gamer.
Yeah.
I can relate. He's a full-blown gamer. The first thing he says in here is gamers.
Wait, no, the first thing he says is fuckhead, right?
Well, that's every gamer's first word, but the next word he said is gamers.
Yeah, when I first played this game, I did not stop saying fuckhead. Like, I kept saying it over and over again for about a year.
Last week with Killer 7, or a couple weeks ago, we talked about like how one of the things that Suda and the other writers on Killer 7 are like surprisingly good at writing just straight up dialogue, and like having different characters have very distinct voices and feel different than each other and whatever. And like for even though I think this game is kind of a step down from Killer 7 in a lot of story aspects, like the characters are still really distinct and interesting here. I think it is probably the game's, like one of its greatest strengths. And like Travis is really good at being just like a fucking asshole. Like it is, I feel like it's rare to play a game and have the main character be just like such an unrepentant, like annoying guy.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I feel like as the game progresses, like he becomes less of an asshole, but not really.
This like the tone of No More Heroes is admittedly not my thing. I've gone through peaks and valleys where I started kind of high on it, then dipped, and then the end of the rank 5 fight has like fully kind of brought me back on board because it was so interesting. Mm-hmm. That said, I can recognize that like the writing is way stronger than most things in this tone. Not by Suda, I just mean in general, where the writing kind of seems like the actual writing seems like a second thought compared to just like the crassness, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like there seems to actually be thought to who Travis is, who Sylvia is, who these like bosses are with only one cutscene to their name. Like, they all seem more fleshed out than, not that they deserve, but than most writers seem to think this kind of material deserves. Does that make sense?
It does.
I agree. Like, he is a specific character. He's not just like any kind of annoying guy. He is like a very specific annoying guy who has particular interests and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, he's like painfully interested in like a few different things.
Yeah, he loves wrestling, which seems like every Suda game is going to have some connection to wrestling, which is where he started.
Hold on, let me jump in.
Yes.
Did you notice? This is for the Suda heads only, Jacob.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you apply here. I don't know if you're a card-carrying member of the Suda team. When you pick up the masks, which give you special moves, did you notice who they're freaking signed by? Initials MS. Mask Day Smith.
Oh-ho!
There you go.
I kind of assumed it was, but I didn't I didn't actually put those two things together.
You can't get something like that by me. I'm a true Suda head right here. Played 1.5 of his games.
Okay, I'm gonna have to break the illusion for you.
Oh no.
It's not Mask Day Smith. It's actually Morio Smith from Superfire Pro Wrestling.
Now that's how you know Susie's a real Suda head right there, and I am
I'm
faking
so sorry I had to do that.
No, hold me accountable.
Well, I mean, is Masked Smith, like, is Masked's whole character in Killer 7 just a reference to that guy?
Kind of. But yeah, we'll go with that for now.
This conspiracy runs deep.
It is just fun to see how much like wrestling is just going to play. Like we talked in Killer 7, it was like, wow, Mask is getting like a lot of screen time compared to the other Smiths here.
Yeah.
And here it's like, yeah, Travis is going to learn a new wrestling move every level, no matter what.
How'd that first cutscene hit you all? Because it's weird. Almost.
Do you mean like the attract screen cutscene
where he basically gives the background of the story?
Uh-huh.
Where I would say, despite how well written we think the rest of this game is, I didn't find this part particularly great because I had to watch it twice to be like, hold on, why is he doing what now? It throws you in at a speed that is like, was this an afterthought or is it intentionally vague?
I kind of admire how in media res the game opens, which is just, like that it truly does. It throws you in with so little explanation, and I think kind of one of the interesting things about the story is like, so very, very generally, Travis is killing his way through like a series of ranked assassins until he can be number 1. And it starts with him killing like number 11 or 10 or whatever. And like there is almost no explanation given. And the game, like, it doesn't seem, for all Travis's specificities, like, it doesn't really need to explain why he's doing this. It just seems like, it's like, you know what, he's just a guy, and he bought this lightsaber on eBay, and, like, he decided this would be a thing to do.
Yeah, maybe it just caught me off guard. I don't know.
I think they really relied, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but before the game came out, there was kind of like an origin story type trailer for the game, but they also kind of like reference it in the sequel, which we won't talk about right now. But yeah, like, so I feel like that might be like a byproduct of like, well, you know, in our grasshopper craziness, like, you should have watched this before playing this game.
Yeah, like when you play Killer 7, you should have read the novel that didn't come to America to explain the rest of it.
Of course. But yeah, I do really enjoy how sudden it all is and just like slapped together.
Yeah, I mean, it's like for a game that has you spend a lot of time doing meaningless bullshit, you know, like the beginning is really like you crash a motorcycle into the gates of a mansion, you cut off 2 dudes' heads, and within 5 minutes you're like fighting a boss with a big flaming sword. You know, it does throw you in really fast.
Yeah, and it's really interesting too, because like it is so video gamey, and you know, Travis just like addresses us like personally in the opening cutscene, but that whole boss fight is so like weirdly depressing too. Like with his narration, like Travis's narration, it kind of gives you like an insight into his sanity like right at the start. It's just like, oh yeah, you are a guy that just bought a lightsaber online and want to kill people. You're kind of fucked up too at the same time.
I playing this, like, I really wish I had played it or could go back in time and play it when it came out. Because I think, like, the way it kind of works as a critique of video games and as, like, I'll see you later, Jacob.
Just shut the door.
I think the way it works, like, as a critique of video games and, like, the people who play them, I think it is interesting. I think at this point, so many games have come out and done this that it feels rote, which is not the game's fault, right? Like, it is a fault of me coming to it in 2023 instead of 2007. That, like, I feel like I'm missing something. Like, I wish I had played it in the time that it might have felt more unique. That said, I think, like, especially by the next boss fight, I thought it was maybe because of how deliberate the writing is and the way it's not like it's not really a game that uses metaphors. It's basically like Travis is going to tell you what the game is about in every cutscene. That I found that a bit interesting, where it feels like just like a letter Suda is writing to me, the player, directly. But like,
definitely,
I hate that there are parts of it that feel so rote just because I'm playing it in the year I chose to play.
Yeah, you know, it's jumping ahead a little to like the open world. But one thing that I very specifically remember from like the discussion when this game came out is like, this is the kind of first game that I remember people saying, no, this is purposefully dull for a thematic purpose. You know, like I'm sure those conversations were had pre-2007, but like the first time that I remember encountering like the game isn't fun for a reason, it was talking about like Travis mowing the lawn, which has always kind of like made No More Heroes have this very particular place in my memory as like a game doing something on like a, you know, narrative and mechanical level.
Yeah, definitely. And I remember specifically the X-Play review for this game. It felt like Adam Sessler was like writing a dissertation about like the themes of this game. And that was like the first time I had ever like heard like sort of like gaming journalism like kind of like written about in that kind of way. Yeah. That it was it kind of made me see the monotony for like what it was, like how intentional it actually is.
It's interesting. I think we've talked about this on the show before, like intentionally tedious game design.
Yeah.
And I still don't know where I fall on it, because it's like from 1,000-yard view, like I respect it. But when I'm playing it, I'm like, well, I still have to spend 12 hours with what you created.
Yeah, and I mean, it's also that thing of like, when you hear quotes from Suda, like, about this game in retrospect, he's like, we had to make it in 2 years with 30 people. You know, like, I
Yeah.
don't actually think that it's, like, that intentional. I think it's kind of a function
Yeah.
of, like, low budget and crunch.
I've been thinking about that is a lot too, because I don't think we have the answer to this. If like when they set out on the project, they're like, all right, we got 2 years and 30 people. They make the choice to make it tedious then. I think that's a really interesting choice. If that's like a
Yeah.
retrospective thing they're saying after they just couldn't make the game at the scope they wanted to,
Right.
then it's an excuse. But it's like, we don't have the answer to whether it's genius or just like a 15-year excuse he's been giving at this point.
And I feel like it could be a bit of both. Like
Mhm.
maybe they set out to kind of like make you feel like you're living Travis's life, but it definitely comes into question when you get further in the game and it's like, oh, okay, I needed that much money to pay for the next fight.
I think that is one of the game's funniest bits, just in terms of, like, this weird setting that it has created, is, like, it is so funny that Travis needs to pay $250,000 for the privilege of going to murder someone. And even in, like, in kind of the first proper boss fight, when you're killing that guy who's like singing in the baseball stadium, Travis is like, wait, this is where my fucking money went to? I had to buy this guy this baseball stadium? And it's like, that is hilarious, in the kind of like nihilism of like, why would any of this assassination like organization work the way it does? It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, like why would it exist at all if this is what we're doing? Yeah.
I think like the game operating as like a critique of video games, which is crazy to think about this in 2007, because I think the problem has only gotten worse in big budget video games in the ensuing 10 to 15 years. But it is like interesting thinking about it in terms of like, you buy a video game to get a kind of a similar-ish experience, and then Travis, the writing kind of, I think, goes back and forth too much, as Travis occasionally will be like very bored by the killing, and then he'll like the next cutscene he'll be like wanting to sleep with Sylvia again, and it's like, okay, like figure out which tone you're going for. But in the moments where it's like, okay, I paid all this money to just do the same damn thing over and over again, and then you have the protagonist killing the big boss being like, okay, fucking whatever. I don't really feel good in this moment. I'm kind of bored. Like, that part is really interesting to me. I'm like, that is crazy to make your protagonist be like, how boring. You know, that's really cool.
Some moments he's also just like, this is kind of sad too.
Yeah,
Why am I doing this again?
But then the next one, he goes back to just being like a pervert, and I'm like, I figured the tone out. Like, how can he bounce back and forth like that?
Well, let's talk about Sylvia and Travis a little, because kind of it's his most concrete motivation. He says it in the first cutscene with her, is he's like, so he kills this first assassin guy. He's kind of like, whatever. Sylvia comes, who is this very sexy like representative of the assassin organization, and he's like, if I reach number 1, will you do it with me? Like, that is the literal line in the game. And Sylvia kind of doesn't really tip her hand one way or another, but it's like, it is very much, Travis is just completely obsessed with this sexy assassin organization lady, and he wants to fuck her, and like that seems to be his primary drive at a lot of points. And it is very hard for me to decide how I feel about this plot point.
Yeah, it's really bizarre, and it kind of goes back to the thing where it's like, I don't know, maybe the goofiness and like bizarre nature of it all is kind of intentional, because it does really just feel like how, like, you know, he starts the game addressing us. He's immediately like, if you walk around his apartment for like 2 seconds, you're like, oh, you're like an otaku, like painful nerd to be around.
Loves porn. Truly,
loves
one
porn.
of the biggest plot points is he never returns his porn on time.
Yeah, it's amazing. All those little like calls that you get. But yeah, I just wonder like how much of it is like kind of like a social commentary on like what nerds like, you know, and how stupid it would be if you were like a a psycho who would go out and like try to kill people for money. Also just to get some sex at the end of the day. It's pretty weird.
Yeah, it's like, it's undeniably sexist, right? But it's like, is the sexism the point? And I don't know. Like, because if it's not, then it sucks. But it's like, is the sexism meant as a critique? If so, is it doing it well? I don't necessarily think I'm the person to say yes or no on these questions. But it's like, I have been wondering that when you're like confronted with these scenes, is he trying to do something smart here? Or is this just like scummy for the sake of putting a like scantily clad woman on screen? And I never know where it lands.
I feel like the game basically wants to have its cake and eat it too, you know, where it's like, I think the stuff that does work is like Travis is just a huge virgin annoying guy. You know, he seems like a man who has never had sex in a way that I think is like very funny and works. And it's like, he is so irritating about this plot point that I do think it works with the other aspects of his character, which is like, he's this annoying guy who's obsessed with, you know, with anime and with porn and doesn't have realistic expectations of women. I think that the thing that the game does, which a lot of games around this time did, is like, it cannot help but also leer at Sylvia. You know, it's like, I feel like it would maybe be easier to be like, okay, obviously this is a critique. If every cutscene with Sylvia wasn't also giving like so many just like scandalous shots of her that are, you know, it's like the Kojima butt angles, where it's just like every camera angle is going to like highlight either her boobs or ass.
It's definitely, it's one of those things where like Travis is presented as this character who is like purely a joke for like most of the game's runtime. But then it's like you guys said, like it would work, but like it's, they also just have these like gratuitous like camera angles and stuff. And it, by the way, it gets way worse on the PS3 version because there's a mode on that version called Very Sweet mode, where it makes Sylvia dress with even less clothing on.
Cool.
So it's like, it's like, oh, we made a mode to enhance the scumminess of these cutscenes that may or may not be intentionally, done. But it's really hard to say, like, what the intention was. But also, I feel like it might be a little bit of, like, a product of its time, you know, because it feels like if you were making games, like, any time before, like, I don't know, 2015, it was like, it almost felt like every game kind of had like a hot lady mandate. It's like, okay, you can have like this really cool, like deep story with like, well thought out themes and writing, but you have to put a hot lady in there. Like it has to happen, guys. Come on.
This is not like a Suda specific problem. Like Jacob, you just brought up Kojima, the worst offender of all this stuff. But like, it's like a 2 steps forward, 1 step back thing, almost like Almeida that we talked about with Killer 7, where it's like, this level is really interesting and saying a lot of smart things about like small town America. And also it's racist as hell. And why does it have to be both? Like, why did you make the decision to fuck up in the good part? And for all the like interesting stuff going on with Sylvia, it's like, there are all those parts where it's like, well, you also just want to kind of be horny for your video game character, Suda. Like, like just commit to the good part and leave the bad part behind.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you can say is like, I can think of a lot of video games that came out at this time that had a character exactly like Sylvia, and the protagonist was not like Travis. They were supposed to be a cool guy that you just unequivocally wanted to be. So like, there is certainly more happening here than in, the just kind of like any random game you picked off a shelf, which would have a character designed kind of like Sylvia.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting too, because I don't know how familiar you guys are with this, but there have definitely been some interviews with Suda where he's kind of like ever since like, after No More Heroes, like he kind of like got this like reputation for being this kind of like schlocky guy when he didn't really like want to be remembered that way. So I feel like a lot of his games after a certain point have kind of like veered away from those like gratuitous themes, like especially after Shadows of the Damned and Lollipop Chainsaw, because those games are like historically not his vision, if that makes sense.
It's kind of a bummer, right? Because it's like, I think before jumping into this season, like I was interested in playing Suda's games, but like I had also been inundated by his like, I guess at this point, more modern reputation,
Yeah.
which is like scandalous and schlocky. And only now have I realized like, you know, some of that stuff. And I think Lollipop Chainsaw was like publisher mandated that they had to make it more risque and all this stuff. And like, it's weird like playing Killer 7 and be like, oh, I don't know that the game is profound, but it's way more intelligent than I was expecting. And then looking into games like 25th Ward and The Silver Case, and it's like, okay, he's doing a lot of interesting shit here. And it seems like he's just been kind of a victim of his own products later in his career, which is also not entirely his fault. It's like, it's kind of a bummer that I don't know if he has wrestled with in his games in any way.
Oh, you guys are in for a treat if you're gonna play Travis Strikes Again.
Oh, okay, okay, yeah. It's interesting because
Yeah.
it's like I now having like found a new respect for his work. It's like I'm also equally bummed out by like the way he is kind of presented in the gaming sphere,
Yeah.
which I think he leans into still. Like when you watch Grasshopper presentations, like he's fully leaning into the James Gunnification of himself.
Definitely.
Yeah, well, I mean, we talked Surreal in our first Killer 7 episode, mentioned the kind of I miss the old Suda meme.
Yeah.
And you can see, and it's like one of the kind of interesting things about his career is No More Heroes is, I think, like absolutely his biggest game in terms of like profile and budget and probably, you know, copies sold and whatever. And it is also like, and I don't say this entirely as a negative, but like a very dumb game in a way that like Killer 7 isn't, you know, it kind of like revels in how stupid it is, which I think is a like totally valid and enjoyable tone to strike. And I think No More Heroes does really interesting things with how dumb it is, but like it's stupid in a way that like Killer 7 definitely isn't. And this being your biggest hit might seem like it almost predetermines the kind of games that you have to make in the future.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Killer 7 is definitely like way more darkly satirical, where it almost gets to like depressive levels. So it's kind of like the game that comes right after it is like this big dumb action adventure like romp. Look at the sexy lady. Wow, ha.
Jacob, finally, this podcast is improving my miserable life.
Oh, you're finding value in the work? You like these games that we've been playing?
No, of course not. We play terrible games. I just actually got to try the sponsorship we've been talking about. I got a Henson razor.
Oh, yes, sir. Last razor you'll ever need.
Truly, it is amazing. I like it so much, I've just started shaving all over my body. My arms, my eyebrows, my legs, everything. I am smooth as a baby's bum, baby boy. And dear listener, you too can experience this bliss if you just go to hensonshaving.com and use the promo code ROTTEN.
You gonna use this razor to shave your head like Max Payne now?
All I'm saying is if Max Payne had a Henson razor, he would not have looked so damn patchy. That's hensonshaving.com, promo code ROTTEN.
Blake, I feel like it's been long enough that we've been offering Nebula exclusive stuff that we just need to run down some of the things people can get right now if they sign up and listen to this podcast on Nebula.
All right, tell me.
Okay, first off, bonus episode for every season. So that's us talking about snuff films alongside Manhunt, comic books with The Darkness, Come and See with Call of Duty. Also, those episodes have some of our best guests, like Gareth Damian Martin, the person who made Citizen Sleeper, talking about Kafka and Serial Experiments Lane, or my favorite YouTuber, Noah Caldwell-Gervais, and his thoughts on Cormac McCarthy and The Last of Us.
Okay, but also, you forgot all the other secret stuff we put up there. Like 2 hours of us raving about the Resident Evil 4 remake, or you and your partner doing an extra episode on The Last of Us 2, or a new episode where we rave about the DLC for the Resident Evil remake. We're ranting and damn raving on that bonus feed.
Do you think we talk about Resident Evil 4 too much?
Hell no. We don't talk about it enough. That's why we're pivoting the show to something Resident Evil.
That's it.
That's like a dozen hours of podcasts right there that you can only hear on Nebula. And there are more every season. Sign up at nebula.tv/somethingrotten to hear them and give us money. Because if you sign up, we get money.
Which means more bonus stuff.
And I can fix my bike finally.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think like he never envisioned No More Heroes as a series. Like it was going to be this one game.
Yes,
and then
yeah, he
was
said
it.
that.
And then it's like, what was the original vision for what Grasshopper did next? Like, does it go back to like visual novels, or what is the history where No More Heroes was not its biggest success, and what does he make next? But we'll never know.
Well, let's talk about some specifics here, because there are just like things in this game that I want to talk about. One of them is, so between every like big assassination mission, you go back to Travis's motel, and the game's basically like, hey, you need this much money to do the next assassination mission. And basically your ways of doing that are like, there are some missions where you can go do more combat and get paid, but a lot of them are just like odd jobs. And so you spend a lot of time in this game like picking up trash, or like getting coconuts from a tree, or you know, like searching for mines on a beach. And it's like it is so, they're the most basic mini games, but like they have grown on me just in that like you do a different one pretty much every time. Like there is a lot of variety, and like we've already talked about, I think the writing of like the guy giving you the missions is so strong that I kind of forgive like how stupid the mini games themselves are.
Yeah, I've had a lot of time spent with this game, and I feel like I could confidently say that I love all the mini games. Maybe not when I first played the game, but yeah, no, they're so like silly. I feel like especially as I've gotten older, like yeah, like comboing a freaking palm tree and like, you know, collecting coconuts is like hilarious to me. And yeah, like you said, Jacob, the dude that gives you all of the jobs is amazing. It's like you are the god of picking up pineapples and scorpions in the desert.
Yeah.
I think I am the gamer this game is critiquing, because I'm trying to min-max all these part-time jobs.
Yeah.
Like I'm doing the one to unlock the next assassination thing. Then it's like, okay, I got to kill 100 dudes for $90,000. I'll just do that over and over until I'm there. So I am the problem No More Heroes is trying to solve.
Yeah, well, to you know, to be fair to you, like it definitely gets to a point where it's like, okay, I need like $1 million for this one thing. So how do I get that as fast as possible? Like,
Oh, no.
I
Can't
wrote
wait.
down the line. Maybe my favorite incidental piece of dialogue in the game is the guy who gives you your odd jobs says, "The first-rated god will give the hard-working man a little smile," which sounds like a Katamari piece of dialogue. And I just like, when that popped up, I was like, that's right. The first-rated god will give me, the hard-working man, a little smile.
That's right.
that sounds like some like, I don't know, Cold War propaganda.
Yeah, that too.
Like,
Let's see. So what else? I mean, so the other kind of strange aspect of this game is it is open world, like in big old quotes, because it's like you have a motorcycle, this enormous, ridiculous, doesn't even really look cool motorcycle that Travis rides everywhere. But as we were kind of talking about with the intentionally dull thing, like there's not really anything to do in the world. It is totally just like a get a quest, drive to the quest, drive back to get another thing.
Oh, you can work out.
yeah.
You can work out.
Oh yeah, you can work out, and you can also pick up little rubber balls and then get beaten up by
What?
a man and learn new wrestling moves.
Okay, yeah, what happens with, because I walked into that bar and the guy was like, hey, get all these balls for me, and I thought, I'm not going to do that. So what happens when you do?
So yeah, you actually do unlock some pretty important like attacks for the gameplay loop, like different like ways of attacking. Like there's like a what do you call it, like a, if you like swing both of the nunchucks, like he'll do like a big like kind of like stinger attack.
Oh.
And it's usually a one-hit kill on, like, most enemies. So I want to say it's worth it to find all the little balls, but it's not worth it, like, at all.
Suzi, you have played this 10 times, so maybe you can answer this question for me. What is going on with the combat? Because my feeling is still kind of like, I feel like I'm missing a layer of it because it is so simple, but I seem like I'm doing fine, and I kind of here's a question. I keep finding new wrestling moves. Do you choose how to activate those different wrestling moves, or are they just like randomly selected when you stun someone?
It's random, yeah. It's totally random.
I thought it was the direction you were coming at the enemy when you pressed the wrestling. It'd be B on.
Oh, maybe.
Because I think
maybe.
I think that's what's happening. Like if you're behind an enemy, it'll be different. You'll do like I think the suplex, but I don't know.
Oh yeah, for sure. But you'll definitely run into moments though when like a guy is like laying on the ground, and then when you do it, he's immediately standing back up.
Yeah,
like he just pops back up. The combat it has some depth to it. I feel like it's like premier feature that nobody talks about is the dark step, which is like the perfect dodge.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I just get accidentally on occasion.
Oh yeah.
So there's a really easy way of getting it, and you just like if you're playing with like a controller, you just rock the controller left and right, or the control stick left and right, and you get it every single time. So there are definitely things about the combat system that look like depth. But I don't know if I would say it's like a Devil May Cry competitor, if you know what I mean.
Right.
I would say it's not. I'm pretty confident.
Yeah. Don't know if I would say that. But yeah, it is very, very simple. But I feel like maybe that was just for the nunchuck controller.
Sure.
You know, because the way it works is if you guys remember, you basically there's like a high and low stance to combat. And I think they mapped those just to buttons on if you play with a controller. So you would literally have to like either point the Wiimote up or down to get your different attacks. It was very gimmicky for sure. Like its simplicity comes with its gimmicks. Like, you know, like throwing the nunchucks forward to do a stinger and all that kind of stuff.
I wonder if I should try playing with the Joy-Cons detached. I wonder if that'll mimic any of that.
That's how I played the...
Okay.
Oh, yeah, because the Switch does have motion controls, right?
Yeah, it's basically the same experience. I guess more accurate, though, as the Wii, because there's not a sensor bar.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that I was looking up, because I was like, what am I missing here, is there's like the baseball mini game where you're supposed to hit the ball and like get it to go through all those guys. And I'm just playing on a controller, and I was like, I have no idea when I hit it. Like I have a good hit that has the baseball go through like 4 guys or not. And I looked at forums and they were like, yeah, I think it's coded just incorrectly because what's supposed to happen is it's based on how hard you swing the Wiimote or Switch controller. But obviously I'm just pressing A. And so like there's no strength in it.
Yeah, I don't think they really thought about that when they were porting it for consoles with controllers. But yeah, it's a lot easier if you have some kind of motion control, because it is, but it's easier, but it's also scary because I'm like, I am going to throw this fucking thing across the room one day. I know it.
Look,
I know it.
This is no shade to the people who work at Grasshopper, who I think make some excellent games, but maybe come out a little underbaked at times. The other day, Diego, who's been on the show before, was on the Darkness 2, messaged me about why he had never played Killer 7. And it was because the game had a bug that if you didn't have a processor with at least 2 cores, the second level would just stop loading past a certain point. And so Grasshopper, sometimes their games come out with some baffling mistakes.
Have they never addressed that?
I have no clue, but it...
oh, no.
It strikes me as just perhaps programming a certain part wrong so that one of your mini games is just not playable for the majority of your audience after the Wii.
Yeah, and just like a PSA for anyone who is having problems with the PC version of Killer 7, just leave your dreams behind, because getting that game ported was a miracle because Capcom owns it.
Yeah.
So.
I think one of the most obvious ways that this is a Wii game that is ported is essentially every single enemy has to be taken out with a QuickTime event, and you kill easily hundreds of them, per like level or encounter, and it is, it's like you weaken them and then it shows a big arrow, and presumably on the Wii you would swipe in the direction of that arrow on the controller. I'm just moving the stick in one direction or another, like the world's most basic revengeance. And then, and here's another thing. It's like, is this a stylistic decision or is this just something that happened? Every single enemy makes the same scream when they die. God, yeah. And it is maddening. It's like, I've never felt worse for playing a game with volume on, just in my house.
Are you playing on PC again?
Yeah.
Like, oh my God. Okay, so I'm pretty sure there's also a sound bug for that. Like, so it's like mistakenly louder than it should be. The death scream of all the enemies.
Well, and I will tell you, there is no option to specifically adjust that kind of sound in the menu.
On Switch, at least, maybe it's the same on all the releases. When you go into a combat encounter, I'd say 99% of the time they will yell the same, "There he is."
Yeah, there he is.
It doesn't matter how. So it's equally as maddening just hearing that over and over and over.
Yeah. I kind of love how, I don't know, just disgusting the enemy barks are in that game. Like,
yeah, they sound bad.
They're just like, there he is, that piece of shit. And it's just like, why are you so mean to me?
Yeah.
I know I'm going to kill you, but like, please.
Yeah, and it's like, I will say with the same enemy death scream over and over, like, it does feel very distinctly arcadey, in a way that I think they would actually be satisfied by, is like, it does turn enemies into just like nothing on the screen. It's like never do I consider that I'm killing humans. It's just these like random little pop-ups that all make the same noise when they die, which is, thematically fitting with what Travis is doing, but it doesn't mean that it's not still very annoying to listen to.
Yeah. Like, it's really interesting that he kind of sees real life as a video game, but good God, please vary this shit, like, a little bit.
Yeah, this is like the psychopath version of Yakuza Like a Dragon. It's like Ichiban sees the world as a video game and does good, and Travis is a murderer.
He's a horrible person, yeah.
All this said, the music, on the other hand, good as heck. Pretty sure
the music's so good.
Pretty sure it's the same composer as Killer 7, so... good stuff.
Yeah, I believe so.
I've used this music in several videos before just because it's so good. Also, a like little factoid about the game is that it's one of those, like, if you buy the soundtrack, it's on 3 discs. Like, it's like they have every variation of every song in the game.
Oh, yeah.
That's like one of the funniest, uniquely video game specific things when you buy an OST and you're just like, where is all this music in this game? Like, what?
Occasionally I'll stream for work and I'll put on the Persona 5 soundtrack, which is just like front loaded with heater after heater, and everyone like on the stream is like, God, this is crazy, Blake, you're crushing it. And then I get to the point where it's like every like 30-second clip from the like games you play in your room, and it's like, oh, it's a nightmare. And I think they should not release OSTs that way, including No More Heroes. You can leave all that stuff off, actually.
Yeah, just put it on one disc, like all of those things.
Yeah.
So as we kind of come to the close of this pod, I want to talk about what we haven't talked about so far, which is like the bosses, which are kind of the biggest thing. It's like this game is essentially a boss rush, except you have to like mow grass in between each boss. But it's like all of the money, all of the like the bosses are all incredibly designed just aesthetically. Like all of their kind of looks are so cool. The arenas are very big, and kind of like Killer 7, they're not afraid to just do like weird stuff with them, which I find very exciting.
And all the bosses except for one are good.
Yeah,
okay. We all know which one that is.
Oh, wait, do we?
Was it the one where you fall in a hole?
Yes. That's bad.
Oh no, I was thinking of someone else, but I was thinking of Let's Shake. That isn't even a boss.
Oh no, that one's good. That's a good moment. That's a great moment in this game. That is the moment where I said, I like this game again. So that's a good boss. But I wanted
to fight him.
That was a good cutscene. No, I don't.
Wait. So do you wanna like give, before we talk about the one we don't like? Yeah. You want to explain this moment?
Yeah. Basically, you go to this big showdown with this Mad Max looking reject who's on an atomic bomb with a brain. And you sit through the game industry's longest cutscene, where he does this countdown, and you're like, this boss fight is going to be crazy.
And I mean, he's yelling like "activate motor 6,"
Yeah.
stabilizers, and it's like the machine is doing all this shit.
It's like total like it's like oh, there's like a term for it, like mecha porn or cyber porn, where it's like you watch Ghost in the Shell and like all the computers look so realistic, and you're like, it's like this for atomic bombs, basically, where you're like, oh my God, they thought everything out. And then a salary man effectively drops out of the sky, cuts this dude in half, and you're like, oh shit. He's not as cool, but this is going to be a crazy boss now. Like, he's going to be so hard. He just one-shot the other boss I was about to fight and his nuclear bomb with a big old brain on it. And then Sylvia shows up, and she's like, oh, shit, the boss is dead. All right, Travis, you're rank 5. And then there's no boss fight. And I was like, that's brilliant. That's so good. And Travis is so pissed. And I was like, for a game about how boring and uninspired most video games are, still the ballsiness of being like, hey, you're not actually going to get to fight the boss up to this point you're probably the most excited to fight, I thought was like a brilliant decision. I was fully on board with it.
That entire level is hilarious because there's literally like a blood trail in the streets, and it leads to like a freaking nuclear bunker, and then it's like just a super long hallway of men, and then no boss fight. And it feels like what we were talking about before, where it's like intention versus budget, where it's like clearly maybe they didn't have time or money to make this boss fight, but they were just like, we need to keep it.
But this, in this case, it totally pays off.
It does,
it's like it absolutely works.
Jacob, how upset were you to play this right after your video about long things in video games?
Yeah, they had that big old hallway.
How mad were you couldn't include this fucking hallway?
I was thinking about that while I was watching your video. I was like, any minute now he's gonna bring up this super long hallway. Nope.
Yeah, I wonder, the point of your video is like games that don't fake the size, and I do wonder like if that hallway is that long or there's some tricks to
that's
it.
what I want to do. I want to see if there's like a boundary break More Heroes video, and see if he pulls the camera outside it or whatever.
Though the hallway is so long that I did Google it to be like, am I doing something wrong? Like,
it's like, is this a puzzle? And it's like, no, you just have to run down.
Yeah, do I have to like go backwards at some point to
I
progress?
I think the IGN wiki used the word excruciatingly to describe how long this hallway took.
Yeah.
That's very funny. I mean, I generally have liked all of the bosses in terms of like their character. I think the guy singing in the baseball stadium is so funny and cool.
Oh yeah, Dr. Peace.
Yeah, his boss kind of isn't anything, but like just introducing him singing this song is so good.
He's got kind of Dr. Peace has kind of like a depressing like backstory too. When you like listen to the things he's saying, it's just like, oh my God, his family left him because he's like a weirdo killer guy.
Yeah.
Like, it's like accepted in this society, but he's just gonna sing. Okay, great.
The boss in the school is weird because she thinks you killed her dad. It's very unclear who her father is. She thinks you killed her dad. You didn't kill her dad, but you like her dad. But as the player, you have no clue who the hell her dad is. And then Travis doesn't kill her, but defeats her, so he can go the rank up. And then I don't know. Is she in the other games? Does she become a bigger character later?
Yes.
Okay.
She does.
Okay.
But yeah, that boss fight is very jarring when you play it the first time. You're just like, what is this? Who are these people? Like, Dad is Travis's mentor, I guess.
But it is, it is also, again, it's like, it's funny in the way that it's just like Travis is just copying anime plot points where he's, he implies that her dad was like, his mentor, and you can kind of picture like the training montage that you would have seen if the story was complete, but it's not. And so it's just like Travis has just kind of made up, because also he says he only watched tapes of him, right? Yeah. Like that's what it's, so it's like, it's just Travis watching TV and learning how to wrestle from these guys' like videotapes.
Basically what we're finding out today is Travis Touchdown is a horrible nerd who is a psychopathic killer who loves porn and also has a parasocial relationship with a wrestler man.
Yeah, and look, what gamer can't relate to that,
I know, right?
And then we have Destroy Man, who is just kind of a superhero. I do really like
Superhero postman.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love the introduction to him where he's just dressed as like a mailman, and he's like, can you turn around for a minute so I can get my costume, please? And then you turn around and he immediately almost kills you, and it's just like, you idiot, why would you do that?
Yeah, why would you listen to me? Like, and then it pays off like at the end where he's just like, how about like a nice little handshake, you know? And then you just freaking cut him right in half. Like,
It's such a good moment. What is Suda's fascination with the United States Postal Service? Because Olmeda is also a postal worker.
I want to say, like, I could be wrong about this, but I did read some kind of interview with him before. Maybe it was in like a Grasshopper art book or something, but I know that before he made games, he was doing tons of dead end jobs. Like, and maybe being in like the Japanese post was one of them.
The
I could
most
be wrong.
dead end job he did, of course, was being an undertaker. But
Yes.
but the postal service might have also been in there.
Yes.
Good joke, Jacob.
Especially an undertaker in Japan. Oh god.
Yeah.
Like,
And so then kind of the most interesting boss, even though she is also like the most annoying to fight, is Holly Summers, who
how dare you say this about my favorite character in No More Heroes? This is
look, I said she was interesting. I just don't like falling in a hole.
Yeah.
I know, it makes sense. It makes sense.
She's a great character, and you get to see Travis not be a fucking douchebag for like 2 seconds in this cutscene, but her boss fight is annoying.
Yeah, well,
it definitely is.
Suzi, tell us about like what you like about her as a character.
You're setting me up right now. I can't believe this. I can't
No,
believe
I'm not.
how hard you
I
are
have
setting me up
no-
right now. I like her design. She has cool hair that looks like my hair. Anyway,
She does look
moving
cool.
on. No, I'm kidding. That is definitely part of it. But no, I really like how she, in a lot of ways, she is kind of like Travis's turning point in the story. Because I feel like after that boss fight, he gets a little bit more serious and a bit more introspective.
I mean, her boss fight has one of the things that you mentioned early on, which is this like weirdly disturbing moment of gore
That
in
was
a
the
game
one,
that
yeah.
is mostly, completely cartoonish with gore.
So this is gonna sound really silly, because it kind of like negates the point of that I think that they're going for, where it's kind of like, this is Travis's wake up call, his realization to like, oh wow, lives are being lost here. Like, this woman didn't have to die. But I like to play the Japanese version because it's censored. The gore is censored, and you don't get the shot of her with like half of her body missing.
Oh, wow.
Like, she's still intact in the Japanese version.
That is interesting.
Because it just creeps me out like so much. Like, it's just so like disturbing.
It's very
that
shocking. Yeah.
cutscene.
So what happens at the end of this boss fight is it is another thing where it's like Travis's relationship with women is weird, where she's this like very hot military lady. Travis is like, hey, I won't kill you. He falls in love with her. She's in love with him, whatever. But he's like, I'm not gonna kill you. And then she puts a grenade in her mouth and pulls the pin, and it is like, credit to the game that we have seen a million dudes' heads fly off in a shower of blood, and still I was like, oh my god, when this happened.
Yeah, and I feel like, and it's so hard to say, right? Because I didn't work on the game, obviously. But that's where I kind of go back to like, maybe the way the female characters are kind of like portrayed in this game is intentional, because it is just so like, I feel like that might be the most Killer 7 moment in No More Heroes 1, because it's so like on its face, like gratuitous, like her design is sexualized, she's like dominating you and all this kind of stuff, but then like her death scene is so shocking, and it just feels like I don't know if Suda or the writing staff like intentionally like wanted that to be Travis's wake up call, but it definitely like was mine and a lot of other players' wake up call, like to just be like, oh wow, this is like honestly like pretty uncomfortable, like what we've been doing and how we've been like kind of treating human life in this game.
Jacob, do you know who used to work? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to address that just to Jacob. Do you both know who used to work at Grasshopper and I believe worked on this game?
Who?
I'll give you a few hints. He looks not unlike Travis Touchdown, and, like both of you, is a YouTuber.
Oh, Johnny Knoxville?
No, he's a YouTuber.
I don't know.
He lived and worked in Japan for a bit. Tim Rogers.
Oh,
really?
Yeah. I just remembered.
He does look like Travis Touchdown.
Oh my god.
I just remembered he worked at Grasshopper, and I can't fully verify he worked on this game, though the timing lines up. Giant Bomb has it listed under his game credits, but Moby Games doesn't, so I don't know.
Gotcha.
But just a little fun fact that Tim Rogers used to work there.
Wow, I could like ask him about that like crazy diatribe I just went on about like wake up calls and stuff.
Yeah.
I can be like, hey, is that what happened?
Yeah.
Potentially.
Unfortunately, I do have to report that in that very moving and emotional scene after she blows her head off, the achievement does pop up that says Beachhead, which I was like,
oh my god.
No.
I'm on Switch where you don't get that, and it was a nice.
I don't think
from...
Nintendo would allow that achievement on their console.
Yeah. Good stuff, Suda. Good stuff. a true artist, an auteur, some say.
That's No More Heroes. It's just like it makes you think, and then it makes you not want to think. You're just like, okay,
yeah,
great. Cool.
Well, I think that's basically where we're going to leave off for the first half of the game. Suzi, as someone who has played all of the other ones as well,
yeah,
I think it's like, my understanding is like No More Heroes is going to end in a very specific place, and then there are 2 more games. Does this one feel, like in retrospect, does this feel kind of like part of a series, or does it still have the vibe of like No More Heroes was this game that they kind of thought was going to be standalone, and then the other 2 are just also exist?
This game is definitely a standalone story. It's definitely a standalone game because even I would say without spoiling it, it for the listener, but like even like 2 and like No More Heroes 2 and 3, they have radically different tones, like and crazier approaches on how they treat specific types of people and gameplay elements. But yeah, they also have very different gameplay styles. So I believe when they were developing this game that they just set out to make it, kind of like the rest of their games, like just a standalone product that has loose connections to the rest of the series or the rest of Grasshopper's games. But yeah, I feel like if you play No More Heroes 2 right after 1, there's a lot of interesting disconnects for sure. Just with like Travis's character, with like plot points that they establish in the first game, and then you're just like, oh, I guess we're just like completely retconning that whole thing, huh? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting.
We've talked about doing 2 and 3 as a season, but also like Jacob, I think we should do the visual novels. Maybe not Flower, Sun, and Rain. Like, I think there's more old rot we need to explore before I go back into the James Gunn era of this man.
Uh-huh.
I feel like if you go back and then you kind of play every game that comes after them, you'll find some pretty meaningful connections. You'll be like, oh wow, cool. That's why this happens in Killer 7, or this is what this part of No More Heroes 1 is inspired by.
Yeah.
That is, I have definitely read enough to know, it's like these are, now everything is a connected multiverse or whatever, but
for sure,
this feels more like, sorry to bring up Tarantino again, but like when you would hear like, hey, technically every Tarantino movie takes place in the same universe, and that was like an interesting idea and not like just the way that movie studios think things should function. And so I do think that it's interesting that he has all these like connections and characters named the same thing and whatever between all his games.
Yeah, totally. And it almost begs the question of like, is this supposed to be the same guy? Because like this universe is so goofy, but then it can also just be like the most depressing thing ever. You know? So it's like it's hard to tell what's connected and what isn't,
Well, Suzi, thank you so much for coming on the show. We had been talking about having you on for a really long time, and I'm glad that it was for a game that you have played 10 times and have complicated feelings on, but really like, I think, overall.
Oh yeah, I love it. I definitely love it. I own Travis's entire outfit in real life.
Oh, that rules.
Oh, wow.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I would love to cosplay him at some point. But yeah, this was great. Thank you guys for having me on. And yeah, I like when I get invited onto podcasts about things that I know the thing super well, you know?
Yeah.
My
really
guess
nice.
is that most of our listeners are probably familiar with your YouTube channel, but please plug that, and in addition, any other stuff that you're doing these days.
Oh yeah, so you know, I'm a YouTuber. My channel is The Sphere Hunter on YouTube and Twitch, where I make my video essays like Jacob here, and I stream on Twitch. But you know, I'm also on Twitter, which is The Sphere Hunter, and Instagram, and blah blah blah, like all 50 new social medias that we have to have, you know. But yeah, I've also been doing a lot of voice work recently, which has been very exciting. I'm gonna be in Cyberpunk, which is really cool.
Yeah, Blake, did you know this?
No, holy shit, whoa.
Yeah, I have my character is modeled after me too, so it's like really funny
Oh
to
my
see
God.
myself in Night City.
Yeah.
But yeah, the most recent thing, and I guess something that the ultimate plug would be, I am working with Way Forward and Limited Run Games on a Clock Tower 1 port.
Announced yesterday.
Which-
Yeah.
Announced yesterday,
Oh my
yeah,
God.
and I'm NDA'd to hell, but I can't say what I'm doing on it. But yeah, I just want to put it out there in the world that if you love survival horror games and just like ancient horror games, like definitely look into this upcoming Clock Tower port if you haven't. It is 100% accurate to the original game, but it's got some surprises that I can't talk about
Hell
yet.
yeah.
We have, I think, talked about Clock Tower on this show, just as a, or maybe it's just been when Blake and I have been playing Fortnite, but like, yeah, that kind of like the survival horror history in that series, and you know, the basically how little it is talked about now versus like its level of influence is just huge.
It's kind of crazy how many games have been influenced by that one game.
Yeah. We talk a lot actually about Clock Tower 3, I think, because of Kenji Fukusaga,
Oh
who
my
we
God.
talk about all the time on the show somehow.
Look, and until next episode, where Blake and I will be finishing No More Heroes, thank you for listening. Blake, you got anything to say at the end of this episode?
No.
Ha ha ha.